Hey friend, welcome to the 12 days of Christmas. This is day 5. What we're attempting to do from MARKINC Ministries to you is to share your stories, your comments of why we do what we do. Why does MARKINC Ministries do what it does in developing all these various resources? So today I'm going to ask my wife Sharon to read some of the comments that you have written into us that kind of help set the stage for what we want to say here in day 5. Sharon, why do we do what we do?
Well, for those of you who have been around MARKINC for a long time, you know that our vision is to offer help and hope, especially to hurting people. And one of the ways that we know that hope is so desperately needed is because of some of the comments that we receive on a regular basis, and in particular through the Ask Dr. Better's platform, where Chuck answers questions about suffering. And as we've mentioned earlier, the suffering is so deep, and I just want to share a couple of comments from a few people who took the time to respond to some of the videos. One person says, "Thank you. I lost one son and another was in a horrible accident and has a severe traumatic brain injury. God revealed himself to me, and I know without a doubt that he's real, and I've been transformed, and I believe all will be restored in heaven. But I finally see that I must build here on earth what will be in heaven and spread that truth." Just imagine that kind of grief in your life and yet finding hope in the gospel. And then another person wrote in response to the question, "Will I know if my loved one is in heaven?" And she says, "Thank you. I lost my grandmother. She passed away on Thursday, March 7th, 2019, from a massive stroke. She was 83 years old and had a massive brain bleed. This video has really helped me." Another person wrote, "4 years ago, my mom died of cancer, and a couple of months ago, my best friend committed suicide. I do hope to see them one day. I miss them so much. Thank you for your words of encouragement." And this is just the tip of the iceberg of some of the life crises that people are facing and reaching out for hope and help.
This is what life in a broken and fallen and dark world looks like to many people. You've heard it said, I'm sure many times, that Christmas is a time of real joy and light and celebration for many, but for some, in fact, probably for a lot more than we wish to think, it's really a time of loneliness and darkness and questions and doubts. I don't know if you've ever tried to read the Bible all the way through, maybe one of those Bible programs where you read a little each day. But then we get to the book of Leviticus and we say, okay, I'm done. Because it's so confusing. It talks about sacrifices. It talks about feast days and festivals. And in Leviticus chapter 23, you will read about one of those festivals called the celebration of booths or tabernacles or ingathering. It has various names, but it is commanded of Israel in the Old Testament to celebrate the Feast of Booths every year. There are 7 feasts that Israel was required to celebrate. This was one of them. And I see a lot of similarities with the suffering that people are going through, because Israel was in enormous suffering for a long, long time. This was a feast day that was to be celebrated in light of the fact that God had delivered them out of Egypt. And what they were to do was leave their homes and build tabernacles or booths or little structures. It seemed like the simpler the structure was, the greater the blessing. Some people would erect a tent. Some people would erect 4 sides, like you see in some third world countries, to a house. They weren't elaborate, but they were for a purpose, to gather the people of God together to celebrate what God has done. It was a time of family and neighbors, a time of joy, a time of deliverance, a time of hope. And it was commanded that 7 days, for 7 days, you would celebrate by doing different things. On the first day and the 8th day, you would offer sacrifices. And in between, you would remember with your friends and your relatives what God has done. Isn't that what this season is? Isn't that what Christmas is all about? But we've forgotten that, haven't we? And maybe one of the things that we can learn from the Feast of Tabernacles is that God has commanded us to come together. There's no greater time of celebration with family than at Christmas time. That's provided you have a good family. That's provided things have gone well. But for those of you who are suffering during this time of the year, maybe you're lonely. Maybe this is a really dark, dark time for you. Remember the Feast of Tabernacles. Build your own little private tabernacle, your own little booth, not necessarily with your hands, but with your heart. And come apart for a season. Come away from the darkness of the world and rest in God and rest in Christ and remember what He's done for you and for me. Remember that story of redemption. Gather away from the world. That's what He wants you to do. Gather away from the world and into your private closet where you can really focus on what Christmas means to you. Christmas is the birth of the Son of God. Christmas is the birth of our great story of redemption, what God has done for us. If I could tell these people anything, I would say that to them. Remember the blessings God has given you. Regardless of what pain you're going through right now, what suffering you're enduring, there is hope. One of the purposes of the Feast of Tabernacles was this: to remind you every year, this is not your home. This is not where God has ordained that you will spend eternity. This is where you are passing through. So build the tabernacle, the temporary home, to remind you this is not all there is. God has promised you so much more hope, so much more help. And Sharon, this is why we do at MARKINC Ministries what we do, to offer people that help and that hope.